64 Tacos Podcasts presents Is This Song Good? This is episode 19, Johnny Cash, Rusty Cage.
Welcome back to another 64 Tacos podcast. This episode of Is This Song Good? We're going to be talking about the song Rusty Cage, originally written by Soundgarden. And as we've been doing the last few weeks, we're talking about cover versions of it. And this is the Johnny Cash cover of the song. What'd you guys think?
I liked it. I have always liked the original by Soundgarden. It's a cool song. It's not as heavy as some of their other songs. And then when Johnny Cash takes the reins, it's kind of like he just adds his own edge to it and really makes it his own and kind of elevates it to a higher level, I think. And I really like how it's sort of, simple acoustic guitar, because there's a lot going on in the original with all the different guitar parts. And he just kind of simplifies it and then sort of keeps building. It starts off simple and then it builds and gets kind of heavier, heavy even for him. He doesn't usually do that type of thing, at least as far as most of the songs that I've listened to from him.
It's especially heavy for Johnny Cash, that's for sure.
Yes. And so, and in a lot of ways, I think I like listening to Johnny Cash's version more so than the Soundgarden one. It's not that I don't want to listen to that song. It's just that the Johnny Cash version kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of draws me to it, kind of in the same way that the Hurt, the Nine Inch Nails cover he does of Hurt. I think this one's right up there with that one as well. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. So I've heard this before. And it was always a little odd to me. I mean, I know I listened to a bunch of those, Rick Rubin American recordings or whatever, that whole series of acoustic, cover albums that he did near the end there. And I always thought this was a weird fit for Johnny Cash, because of the sort of, it's interesting because you're right. He does do his Johnny Cash thing to it. The sort of like, ba-dum bum bum, ba-dum bum bum, like that sort of like, up and down, walk the line.
Cowboy riding into town.
Right. Yep. It kind of works. I mean, it works. It's kind of odd. I don't know. It feels pretty different from the original, obviously, in the instruments and stuff. I think the song really kind of takes off in the second half. In the Soundgarden version, it does that weird, like odd length measure, rhythm thing, which he, wipes all the weirdness out of that and just makes it sort of a straightforward thing. But I feel like he feels more comfortable singing in that second half. In the first half, it just feels a little strange to me the way he chooses to. I mean, he's just doing Johnny Cash on it, but I don't know. Maybe it's just knowing that the original so well. It sounds cool. It's just it feels a little awkward at first, and I feel like it really settles in the second half when the electric guitar comes in and on the Johnny Cash cover. And it's sort of like the tempo kind of relaxes down a little bit. And I think that part is really, really effective. The first part's interesting. But I wouldn't, I don't know. For me, it's a step down from his best covers. Like, I would have it not, I agree that Hurt, like I'm almost more drawn to the Johnny Cash version now, because it sits so perfectly, in his persona and his voice at that age. This one feels just a little awkward. It's really cool still.
I know what you're saying about the voice thing. It's weird going from Chris Cornell, who is arguably one of the greatest rock and roll singers of all time,
right.
to Johnny Cash, who is a legend, but not known for his dynamic singing.
Right. And it doesn't play to his strengths.
He sings his Johnny Cash voice,
right?
And that's wonderful, but it's nothing like Chris Cornell in any way.
And I also feel like it doesn't play to his vocal strengths, which is sort of the lower register. He's just sort of like, kind of in the middle of his range, and he's just kind of, and also the lyrics are sort of this weird apocalyptic, strange mishmash, which just sounds awesome when Chris Cornell is screaming them and you don't know what the hell he's actually saying.
Right.
But it's a little bit weird when you hear them enunciated. I mean, some of the lines are really cool, and some of them are like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. Okay. It's one of the, because it's so stylistically different from Johnny Cash's usually usual writing approach for lyrics and stuff. And yeah, like near the end there, when he finally does the gonna break my rusty cage, but he does it like way down in the bottom of it, like lower end of his voice. Then you're like, oh, why didn't you do that from the start? That's what I thought at the end of the song. Right. Like, man, that I feel like it was just kind of you're like, I feel like this could have been a little better if they just would have, I don't, and that's the thing. I don't have a solution as to what in my mind would have fixed it, but maybe it is just I'm so used to the sort of weird stop start, because like the original song is a truly strange rock song already.
Yeah.
It's a weird sounding rock song. You have to get used to it a little bit.
It's one that I did not care for. I mean, we were in 7th grade when it came out, maybe.
Yeah.
And I didn't care for it at the time. I don't even remember having heard it back when it first came out. I didn't really get into Soundgarden until Super Unknown came out.
Right.
But yeah, going back, I was like, man, like you said, it's a really bizarre song because it's structured so strangely. And then Johnny Cash just takes all that, says erase. Yeah. I'm gonna write a Johnny Cash song with these lyrics and the basic melody, and then I'm gonna turn on the reverb for the second half, and that's the only change you're gonna get.
Yep. Which it's interesting. Like I don't think it's an unsuccessful cover. I just feel like the second half of the song works better than the first half.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with that part. But I think it's a great cover personally. I think it's more tangible in the end than the Soundgarden version of it, because the Soundgarden version is so strange. I don't know if having not grown up in the grunge era, if I would have enjoyed Rusty Cage to begin with. Because it is such a strange one. And I really, really appreciate what Cash did with it, just simplifying the crap out of it and making it very accessible. Not that I dislike the original, or even that I think I still think the original is probably better, but I think it's hard to get to. It's not friendly to its listeners.
And I appreciate that he picked that one, because there are a lot of other Soundgarden songs that are much more accessible, much more well known, that he could have gone for, and he chose this one.
Right.
So yeah. And it wasn't really like, oh, I'm gonna tackle this strange grunge type of song. It's just sort of like I think he chose songs that he really enjoyed and wanted to kind of do it his own way.
Yeah.
And I like that, he just kind of stuck to his guns on that.
Yeah. My memory when reading about when they were writing these albums, when it was basically, Rick Rubin would be like, hey, what do you think of this? And he'd play a song for him, and you just kind of wait for Johnny Cash to be like, yeah, I like that one. Okay, let's do that one, But it is interesting to imagine somebody playing the Soundgarden version of Rusty Cage and Johnny Cash saying, yes, I'd like to do that. That sounds like that's in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting collection of songs. Like you said earlier, the Hurt is probably the best thing to come out of that.
Yeah. Well, that's one that if you told me, and I'd never heard the Nine Inch Nails, and you're like, hey, this is a Johnny Cash song, I'd believe that was like he was the person that wrote it, because it sits so well with his voice, especially at that age with the frailty that he was developing, and with his persona, and like the it all works perfectly, almost better than a Johnny Cash song, but like it's almost more Johnny Cash than Johnny Cash. But this one, if you told me that he wrote it, I'd be like,
Maybe we'll do a deep dive into that one later on in the season.
Yeah, maybe we can cap off this series with that most famous cover song, pretty much, at the very end or something. But yeah, I would say I still prefer the original. But every once in a while, I think it's a good cover. Its strengths are, what Dave, what you like, which is it doesn't sound very much at all like the original, so it feels like a very different song while still being recognizable. I still prefer the original version, but I do think it's a good cover. I think having it have a very different sort of arrangement with like smoothing out the weird stuff, and then also doing mostly sort of like outlaw country type instrumentation, sort of that different, because you're not going to compete with Chris Cornell singing wise. No. So it's kind of good to make it sound different. I think that keeps it from being compared too directly, at least vocally.
Yep. So you'll say it's good, but you like the original better.
Yes.
I think I'm going to say the same, but I think it's a lot closer for me than it is for you. How about you, Zach?
I'm going to say that I like the cover just a little bit better. That I'd probably prefer to listen to Johnny Cash's version over the Soundgarden one.
All right. Well, there you go. Up next, we are doing a song that you picked, Dan. What do we got next?
We're gonna do the Dinosaur Jr. version of the Cure song "Just Like Heaven."
Sounds good. We'll see you then.
Okay.
I caught it on audio.